All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is a Tuesday, and so glad to be talking to Arlen Grossman. It's an Arlen Tuesday. Arlen, how are you today?
I'm doing just fine, Hal. As I mentioned before we got on the air, it's getting a little rainy here, but that's fine. I like being indoors.
Regular Halitics viewers and fans of Arlen may notice that we have, I think, improved connectivity today. Arlen using a wired connection to his internet. And although he's in the wilds of the Green Mountain State, Vermont, we are getting really good reception. So hopefully we won't get those freezes, Arlen, because sometimes in the middle of your conversation, your entire frame just freezes. We hear you fine, but you're sort of stuck in some perpetual expression that looks a little odd over a second or two.
Yeah, and I can't move. When we have a freeze, I just can't move or do anything. So it's really hard.
Well, maybe we need to give you some sort of like tranquilizer so you'll be able to just sit without any expression or motion for some period of time. We do ask the question today, how will it end the shutdown? We're going to get into some details, including, I thought, a pretty good clip from the Today Show, NBC's morning program from yesterday, Arlen. But what's your sense? I mean, honestly, I think for us, both of us are work out of our houses if we do work. And I don't feel like it's impacting on my life. Do you sense that there's a big effect on the American public so far, that now that we're in their third week, a 13th day or 14th day of the shutdown?
Yeah, we may be okay, but I think the rest of the country, not so much. I mean, there's going to be a lot of jobs lost, a lot of, opportunities, and I think the Democrats are doing the right thing. They're standing on one issue, the health care, which is, I think, reasonable enough. And they shouldn't just give up and say, oh, whatever you want, Trump. So I think they have to make their stand, and they're making their stand this way. And I don't think anybody's really believing Trump and the Republicans, who keep blaming the Democrats for everything, when the Republicans are doing all sorts of things that, and who are they going to fool? I mean, they control the government. They've got both houses of Congress and, the presidency. So it just, I think it's helping the Democrats. I think it's their favorability and approval is better doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I haven't seen any recent videos. I know we played a clip there from CNN with Harry Enton, which indicated that the Democrats were the preferred, right? That the position the Democrats were taking was where most Americans were. And I definitely agree. We talked about this off air, that the healthcare is the issue for them to really focus on, because healthcare costs are so expensive. I'm just looking over. I want to make sure that I have you correctly on screen. But healthcare costs are so expensive, Arlen, and such a burden for so many Americans, and such an unjust burden, too, one that we shouldn't be facing. So, as long as they maintain that message and they maintain that unity, I think they will come out of this okay. Do you think they will, though? I mean, the leadership of the Democratic Party, not very good. I think we can agree on that. How much do you trust Jeffries and Schumer to see this through?
Well, they better. They certainly can't give up now. It's just such a good issue, and it's only one issue. I mean, they could have done, 5 or 6 or 10 issues, and maybe they could get some blame. But if it's just that one thing, all the Republicans have to do is, allow some health care, extra funding, and it'll be over. But right now, they just want to blame the Democrats for everything. And, in the long run, who knows? But I think right now it's helping the Democrats' popularity. But, elections are a long way away.
Well, it's going to be tough for the Republicans to fold, because their whole brand is, we're strong, even if we're wrong. We're not going to ever give in. Trump's a winner. And if they, concede that they went too far with the Medicare and Medicaid cuts, then they're going to look weak. And I think the Democrats need to just keep hammering it. So what? I mean, of course, we want them to look weak, but they need to stand firm, because otherwise it really will hurt the Democrats in the long run. They'll be viewed as craven, as, feckless. And despite the fact that most Americans dislike Democratic policies less than they dislike Republican, again, this could hurt the Democrats if they don't stand firm.
But the fact is, all these different things that Trump is doing now, you're right. They're not going to back down on anything. But nobody, I think, can believe that it's not the Republicans' fault, since they do, like I say, control everything. They control the government. So it's really it's their thing. And I think the Democrats just have to stand firm with healthcare.
All right, well, you're watching again, Halitics. Please do subscribe. We always ask you to do that. Click like and engage in some fashion with these videos, whether commenting, whether clicking like or chatting with us during the program. Also, call 240-242-5646. I did check the lines, and Arlen, we're seeing the subscriber numbers rise, but not the number of calls to the program, which really, really disappoints me, because this is what Halitics is all about. It's about a conversation, a dialogue, if you will, on how we can make America a little better. It's kind of gone in the wrong direction. We've been going sideways at best. We need to be moving forward. That's what Halitics is all about.
Which we're going sideways, but things are getting much, much worse. So, yeah, but I think that, it would be nice to get some calls. Maybe your phone is broken. How have you checked your phone?
It's not broken. I actually tested yesterday, got a call while I was off air. Did not actually answer, but I did listen to the voicemail, and it was remarkably obscene. Every other word was one of the 7 words that you're not allowed to say. They were very angry, accused me of being a Biden supporter. And I thought it must have been somebody calling to berate you, Arlen, because nobody who watches my videos or listens to them would ever confuse me with a Biden supporter. Arlen, from a story that does seem to benefit or a dynamic that's benefiting the Democratic Party right now, that is the shutdown. Let's move to the Middle East, where the situation may be redounding to the benefit of Trump and MAGA world. That is the announcement that there is a ceasefire that does appear to be holding, although the Saudi news agency Roya has been reporting that Israel continues to kill Gazans. I do have a correspondent, I believe, who is in Gaza, who says, yes, things are better. We are not having the bombs, we're not having the drones, but every now and then still Israel is killing Gazans, killing Palestinians in Gaza. That said, if this ceasefire seems to hold, or even the killing by Israel stops, Trump has said that he is planning at some point to turn over authority to Palestinian governance. Won't that really help the Republican Party both in the midterms and in 28 when they run for president?
Well, this certainly is a good thing for Trump. He expected to get a Nobel Peace Prize out of all of this. But, when you come right down to it, it's very iffy. We don't know what's going to happen, how Hamas is going to, what they're going to do. And we don't know, a lot of things. So it's iffy. It's not it's not a done deal. So, right now it looks good. There's some progress, but, we don't know what the future is going to look like. Although, of course, the Republicans are always going to try to, push it in their direction, that they're doing great, but we'll have to wait and see.
Well, you mentioned we don't know what Hamas will do. I think obviously the bigger wild card is Israel, is Netanyahu. The hardliners there are very, I think, concerned that this deal could ultimately lead to some kind of autonomy, some kind of self-governing in the Gaza area and possibly even the West Bank. That terrifies them, that Palestinians would have self-determination. So we've obviously got to wait out Israel, and only if Trump is really prepared to say no to Netanyahu consistently without any wiggle room, I think, will we see peace, which obviously we want to see. I mean, I hope Trump does hold the line. I really do. I don't want more Gazans, more Palestinians to be killed by Israel. But as you point out, that's a big if. Of course, we want that to happen. But I do think that it will hurt. And I mentioned this yesterday in yesterday's program with Carlos, which I thought was a good show, by the way. Folks who haven't seen it should check us out. That this is a problem for the Democrats because it really does point up their failure to bring about some kind of end of the killing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Biden had a chance, but he pretty much sat on the sidelines and never really made a move to rein in Netanyahu and Israel. But Trump seems to be the one that was able to do something because he knows a lot of these people. He's he's taking advantage of everything and doing certainly at least better than the Democrats did, better than Biden, better than Harris would have done. So, that this is his one success out of 900,000 bad things that he's done.
I don't even want to give him that because this went on way too long and it's not over, as you point out. And to me, it's almost akin to a serial killer saying, hey, I'm not killing anybody anymore, so give me credit for that. I'm not going to give you credit, but I won't condemn Trump going forward for more bad actions in the Middle East, in Israel, if he maintains somehow control over the Israeli government. I want to play this clip because Kamala Harris is on a book tour and she is getting heckled at her stops. Chicago, Washington, and Baltimore have all seen her heckled for failing, as we just discussed, to hold Israel to account. Let's play just a very brief clip from YouTube. So there's a lot of back and forth. It's very raucous. You hear people yelling, get out. They're yelling at the one or several hecklers to get out. It is hecklers. It's more than one, but there's a conflict in the audience between a small number of attendees at this book event who are critical of Harris and all of her fans. And the fans are yelling, get out. So let's play some more and you'll hear her response.
They won't let that happen. I'm not president right now. There's nothing I can do.
So she says, I'm not president right now. There's nothing I can do. And then she gets a lot of applause. That's the end of the video. That, to me, answer, Arlen, it does not age well. Because she says, go bother Trump, but she's not president, in part because she didn't take seriously enough those who criticized Israel and her administration's support for Israel, and also because they didn't. Well, that's why. But then to say, well, go bother Trump, and now Trump seems to have been able to stop the killing for a while.
Well, sure. Kamala Harris, she never really had a chance to do anything in the short time that she had. She just had to watch Joe Biden do his thing and pretty much accept it. And when it came time to campaign, she, followed along with whatever he had proposed and done. So it's tough for her. And as far as heckling goes, we're probably going to see a lot of that in the coming future, just because of all the political climate in this country is so bad. There's so much anger and hate. We saw that with the Charlie Kirk thing, and so that's hardly news when there's some kind of heckling or disagreement.
I think today is the day of commemoration for Charlie Kirk. I believe it's not getting a lot of media attention. I know I was looking to see if flags would be at half staff. They are not. They were on the 11th, September 11th, of course, 9/11, but also when I think the day of Kirk's murder was being, recognized by the federal government. But apparently today is the day of commemoration set aside for Charlie Kirk. Arlen, what would you say? And I know you love these questions, but if the Vice President Harris, former vice president, but we can still call her Vice President Harris, if she came to you or one of her staffers said, Arlen, we're getting a lot of heat at these book events where people are heckling us about what happened during the Biden years in Israel and our failure to stop it. What should we say? How should we best respond to the hecklers? What would you advise?
I don't really care that much about what she does, just because I don't want her to be running for president as a Democrat. She's not the one that would do the best. There are several others that would have a better chance, I think, that have better policies. We know she should have been more, against Netanyahu and against all the aid and comfort we were
let me
giving
just
to
cut you off for a
Israel.
sec, Arlen. I know you don't like that, but I just want to real quick, because I know where you stand on this. We both don't like Harris. We don't think she's the right choice, but I don't think that question is purely academic. Well, first of all, she is one of the front runners, and I know on Meet the Press, or one of the programs over the weekend, one of a high-level Democrat said she would be a good, strong candidate in 28. I disagree with that. I probably right now I would say Newsom would be the strongest of the Democrats. I don't think we want to see Harris go up against J.D. Vance. Not because she couldn't win, but I think there's a good chance she wouldn't win, even if it's a fair election. But Arlen, it's not a purely academic question, because the Democratic Party really was pretty supportive all the way through the Harris-Biden administration's policies. So whoever runs as the Democratic nominee in 2028 will have to answer this question. What should be our policy towards Israel? What should we have done differently, and what should we do differently going forward than we did during the Harris-Biden year? So I think it's a fair question. I mean, you must have some thoughts, like, even if you don't like her, what she could say, or what Democrats should say when confronted with this failed policy.
Well, you're right. It's a failed policy, so there should be changes. And Kamala Harris and other Democrats, have to come out and say, we supported Israel Netanyahu too long, and we have to back off a bit and be more fair-minded and more pro-Palestinian. And I think that would be the best way to handle this. They just can't rely on Biden's policy for what they're thinking. So, there needs to be a change. You're right.
I think that's a great answer, Arlen. I really appreciate your coming to that conclusion. And I think one way Democrats can frame that is by invoking their very popular president, Barack Obama, who was far perceived, and I think correctly so, as far more objective. And I mean, he wasn't perfect. All the presidents, I think, have been too pro-Israel, but he was far more willing to criticize Israel and call out some of their worst actions. I think there was a vote at the UN at the very end. He wasn't great. Again, I don't want to give him too much praise, but better. So why not invoke his legacy and say, we need to go back to the Obama years when it comes to the way we respond to Israel? I think that would be a pretty effective way to handle that question.
Well, what did Obama do during those years? I'm not clear what
well,
you're referring to.
He certainly didn't move the embassy, for example, to Jerusalem. He kept it in Tel Aviv. Periodically, he would tell Israel that he did not want them launching any attacks against Lebanon, Syria, and there was a resolution at the UN in the Security Council to condemn settlements in the West Bank towards the very end of Obama's term in office, and he did not, I believe, veto that resolution condemning Israel. So those were some steps he took that were critical of Israel.
Yeah, he probably should get some credit for that, but nobody's really thinking back to what Obama did because he didn't do anything really drastic or significance, really. So we can't rely on Obama. We just have to rely on whoever is running now, people like Newsom and anybody else that would be running for president as a Democrat, that, hey, we made a mistake under Biden and we need to rectify it.
Let's move on. The question for the audience today, for everyone today, is how will the shutdown end? How will it end? I want to play this clip. This was from Today's show yesterday. I thought they did. So I guess it wasn't today. I guess it was yesterday. So you see it says today, but it should say yesterday. Here we go.
This morning, as the shutdown stalemate continues, the White House warning more jobs could be lost.
The longer this goes on, the deeper the cuts are going to be.
Workers at multiple departments throughout the federal government have already received layoff notices.
We don't want to be laying off federal workers, but the Democrats have shut down the government.
The president weighing in on his way to Israel.
We're ending some programs that we don't want. They happen to be Democrat-sponsored programs, but we're ending some programs that we never wanted.
Democrats slamming the move.
Said there aren't Democrat workers or agencies and Republican agencies. That's ridiculous.
I'm going to stop that there because I thought that was a very good response by Kelly. Of course not. The agencies are there to provide support for the American people, to protect the American public. And, you know, Trump, I think, just looks like a doofus when he says that. I know that he'll have his support from his base, but the base is less than half the American people. As long as the Democrats continue to center the interests of the American public, I think they can do okay and they can win. They can win elections.
Right. They can't, do anything other than just fight back and stick with what they're doing. Because the Republicans, sure, they want to blame the Democrats for everything. They want to blame Schumer for everything, but I don't think the American people are buying it. I mean, the Republicans are the ones in charge. So, it's going to hurt the Republicans more.
Well, I mean, it's true the Republicans are in charge, as you say, but the Democrats, by the filibuster, are able to prevent, or the 60-vote rule, which I think the Republicans actually put in place, which is to override or to raise the budget deficit ceiling. You need 60 votes. That's the rule. And this was a Republican law which said, hey, you keep spending more and more. The government keeps overspending and spending, these big programs. So we're going to stop you from doing that by requiring you to pass a law to raise the budget deficit, or the government will shut down. So really, the Republicans passed this law, and now they're completely flouting it because they insist on tax cuts for their base, that is the billionaires, as well as massive spending increases for ICE and the Pentagon.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that the Republicans need to be blamed for, and they are being blamed for because, the Democrats have no power. So, and then that's going to continue to the same way, I think, for a long time. And I think there's also going to be the effects of what the Republicans are doing, what Trump is doing, as far as, employment, as far as inflation. A lot of things are going to get worse, I think. Unfortunately, because the government is shut down, we don't know about the jobs numbers right now and the inflation numbers, but because they're not, reported, I guess. So, but I think the people will be affected. They'll feel it.
By the way, I just wanted to comment on something I was reminded of when I saw Mark Kelly there saying there's not Democratic and Republican programs. Kelly was the guest, I guess, on Face the Nation, maybe, who said that Harris would be a strong presidential candidate in 2028. And look, he's being a loyal Democrat. He's a centrist like she is. I honestly think the Democrat Party has to move away from that kind of cheerleading, from the support for each other, because that was a big problem in 24. The refusal to say, hey, Joe Biden isn't our best, isn't a first stringer anymore. He shouldn't be the starting quarterback. We need somebody else to come in. I think that Democrats need to be willing to say those harder truths. Otherwise, you do get stuck with candidates who aren't going to win.
Yeah, I think that the Democrats, need to, when it comes to people like Harris and let me go back here. I think Harris did a reasonably good job. I think she did a good enough job that she could have won, but I think the American people were more focused on Trump. They wanted Trump to win. And And that's, I think, what really happened, because they were disappointed in how they were doing, and they blamed the Democratic Party. And she was part of the Democratic Party, and the Republicans would blame Biden. So, I don't think it's her fault. It's a lot of things. It's basically the Democratic Party's fault.
All right, Arlen, let me move on to a story. Unless you had something else you wanted to add about the shutdown, anything in particular you'd like to see the Democrats say or do differently, or just keep doing the way they're doing now?
Keep doing what they're doing now. I think it's helping them, and it's hurting the Republicans, and that's a good thing.
Arlen, this is a story I haven't really been following, but you brought it to my attention again today. I did notice it. This is this bribery of I guess he's the Immigration Department head, Tom Homan, and
right.
He was at least audio tape captured accepting a bag with $50,000 in it. There was going to be a bribery case brought against him, but it was dropped after Trump became president for obvious reasons. Trump was never going to allow that. What's the latest news on this story?
Well, the thing is, it was the FBI that, that had that information, that had an audio tape at least of what happened. So it's pretty obvious that the guy did take the money, but none of the Republicans are willing to say what he did, or what he did was wrong, or what he did with the money. And it got to the point that yesterday on George Stephanopoulos' show, or rather Sunday, he wouldn't answer the question, and Stephanopoulos just gave up and cut him off, I think, early. Because they're not answering the question, they're avoiding it.
We got that clip. I'm going to play it. You recommended it, Arlen. We'll play the clip of J.D. Vance with Stephanopoulos. Here's what, before we get to it, Snopes reports. Snopes is very conservative. They don't ever report anything that they don't have a lot of proof to back up. Basically, what happened in terms of the reportage, multiple reliable news outlets reported that Tom Homan, the border czar, I don't know what that's the official title, had accepted $50,000 from an undercover FBI agents, and reportedly, what Homan had promised in return for the money was government contracts. So that's just outright bribery. That's and extortion, not extortion. I guess I don't know what the word is. He's accepting bribes. He's just taking bribes is what Homan is doing.
He should be in jail.
Influence peddling. No question about it. An obvious case of influence peddling, clearly violating federal law. And here is J.D. Vance doing everything in his power to avoid taking any responsibility for this crime.
Yeah, what a weasel.
The White House border czar Tom Homan was recorded on an FBI surveillance tape in September 2024, accepting $50,000 in cash. Did he keep that money or give it back?
George, you've covered.
By the way, I want to before we play more from Vance there, I thought that was a great question. I really like that question, Arlen. I don't know, right? I mean, it's easy to understand and doesn't require nuance or anything.
Or no, yeah.
It's a yes or no. And look at the way Vance just dodges and equivocates and evades.
Ad nauseum, Tom Homan did not take a bribe. It's a ridiculous smear.
So he says he did not take a bribe, but he did take $50,000. What did he do with the money? Vance, what did he do with it?
The reason you guys are going after Tom Homan so aggressively is because he's doing the job of enforcing the law.
No, they're going after him because he took $50,000 in return for promises to peddle contracts to the people bribing him. That's why.
Of course.
He's a good liar, is Vance, I guess. I'll give him some credit.
It's really preposterous. I know Tom. I think that he's a good man. He gets death threats. He gets attacked. He gets constantly.
All of this is totally irrelevant, Arlen. What I'm doing most of the talking, but I want you to kind of give your narrative because you had recommended this video. What was it about this particular video that really struck you?
Well, what we're seeing now that J.D. Vance is avoiding the question, making excuses, blaming the Democrats, whatever. And George Stephanopoulos just asked him a simple question about that $50,000, and Vance is avoiding it. So I think at the end, Stephanopoulos got so upset and frustrated that he just cut him off.
By people because he has the audacity to want to enforce the country's immigration laws. I think that it would be a much more interesting story about why is it that Tom Homan, who is simply enforcing Americans' immigration laws, is getting constantly harassed and threatened to the point of death threats. That's a much more interesting question that I think journalists should focus on.
I want to interrupt there because the way Vance is talking, it's as though this is the only question that Stephanopoulos asked him, that Stephanopoulos brought him on board to just talk about this one issue. When this is the last question, they had spent 5 or 6 minutes talking about the Gaza deal, talking about the shutdown. So it's not as though Stephanopoulos like sandbagged him or forced him to talk about one topic. They discussed the entire range of issues, that are most important front and center today. But this is obviously a very important one as well.
Yeah, and I think Stephanopoulos addressed that issue at the end, the last thing he said before he cut the program short, that, hey, I didn't ask all of these other things. I just asked, what about that $50,000?
Yeah, and I will play one more. We'll play some more because Vance had a real whopper in here.
Disagree on that question.
Well, wait, you said he didn't take a bribe, but I'm not sure you answered the question. Are you saying that he did not accept the $50,000?
George, this story has been covered ad nauseum. He did not take a bribe. Did he accept?
So he won't say what he did with the money. He just said, he didn't take a bribe. He's denying it's a bribe, but he doesn't say what happened with the money.
$1,000. I'm sure that in the course of Tom Homan's life, he has been paid more than $50,000 for services.
In a bag? I mean, that's how you're paid, is you cash in a bag, really?
Question is, did he do something illegal? And there's absolutely no evidence that Tom Homan has ever taken a bribe.
Well, there actually is. Obviously, there's evidence that he did something illegal.
Sure.
First of all, the money itself is evidence, but the fact that the agents are saying he agreed to take the money in return for steering government contracts to them, that's illegal.
Illegal,
I'm asking you,
which is why he's working in the administration.
I'm asking you, did he accept the $50,000 that was caught on the surveillance tape? Did he accept that $50,000 or not?
George, I don't know what you're talking about. Did he accept $50,000?
That's the biggest whopper of all, right? I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, of course. But what's scary, Arlen, is when people lie so shamelessly. Some folks believe them.
Well, you're talking about the biggest liar of all is, of course, Donald Trump, and Vance might be in second place.
Yeah, this seems to be a politician's disease for sure. They are very averse to the truth.
$1,000 for what?
He was recorded on an audio tape in September 2024, an FBI surveillance tape, accepting $50,000 in cash. Did he keep that money?
Accepting $50,000 for doing what, George? I'm not even sure I understand the question. Is it illegal to take a payment for doing services? The FBI has not prosecuted him. I've never seen any evidence that he's engaged in criminal wrongdoing. Nobody has accused Tom of violating a crime, even the far left media like yourself. So I'm actually not sure what the precise question is. Did he accept $50,000? Honestly, George, I don't know the answer.
So I'm going to stop it there because after a while, I just start to think, get dirty. It just, this kind of dishonesty is I think it really turns American people off politics to a tremendous degree as well, Arlen.
And I like the way he said, a far left reporter like you, George Stephanopoulos. I mean, that's hardly the case.
Of course. All right, let's move to yet another story that you recommended, or unless you had something else, because I didn't play the whole clip. I know you said at the end, Stephanopoulos just threw up his hands and said, I'm leaving. They had been talking for a while, though. This is being made out, I think, as more than maybe it was. I mean, obviously, Stephanopoulos was pissed off. He was, Vance insulted him, said your show has no ratings. And I don't think Stephanopoulos probably liked that so much, but they had already been talking for 12 minutes at that point, 13 minutes. So I think it was close to the end of the interview. But was there anything else that really struck you there that you wanted to explore?
Well, I think the most outrageous thing, and I don't know if you plan to get into this or not, but Pam Bondi's testimony before the Senate, she really just ignored all their questions, came back with, she had a little piece of paper where she, blamed the Democrats for everything, and just basically she didn't really care. She knew she wouldn't get in trouble for what she did. The Congress would not say, hey, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. You're supposed to testify. But instead she went on the attack most of the time. And she looked really bad, I think. And Saturday Night Live made a great spoof of it on Saturday night with Amy Poehler playing Bondi and just doing a great job of showing off just how ridiculous Pam Bondi is and was.
Yeah, I did not go to that story, Arlen. I apologize for that. I also notice we're going to get this video up. It will not be live except on Facebook, but we'll have the whole video, of course, on YouTube as soon as the program ends. Arlen, this was another story you did want me to cover. We want to discuss involving media. We talked about ABC. This is several news outlets, New York Times, Newsmax, AP, all saying they will not abide by these new Pentagon Trump rules. Tell us about this.
Well, it's just Hegseth. He just wants to be in total control of everything, and including the press. So he's putting in really, a lot more tougher restrictions about where they can go, what they can do, So, the media at least is stepping, is standing up to him. Even Newsmax, which is a very conservative television network. So I don't know what's going to happen, but Pete Hegseth is just going too far on just about everything. He is definitely not qualified to be where he is, and some of his rules are just outrageous.
Well, basically they're saying that everything that's published, everything that's authorized for any coverage at all, has to be approved by high-level Pentagon minders, and they want these news outlets to sign off on those rules in order to have access to the Pentagon at all. And I think the Times, obviously, AP, Reuters, there's a number of them, Washington Post, Newsmax, are all correct to just say, fine, then we just won't go into the Pentagon. Because the condition is you don't get to come into the Pentagon if you don't sign the understanding, sign a memorandum that you understand our rules. And I think the defense by Hegseth is, well, we just say they have to understand our rules. They don't have to actually follow them. But the media outlets are saying if we sign off, we're saying that we acknowledge that we could be violating national security if we publish something that you don't want us to. And we don't agree to that. We're not going to say in advance that when we cover a story about the military that you don't want us to cover, that means we're violating national security. We're not going to agree to that. And I think they're absolutely right to do that. I also think, Arlen, that media prioritizes far too often, far too much access, right? Getting into the room. And you don't need to get into the room. You get a good source, you get a leaker, then you cover the story better often. Because when you're in the room, when you're at the press conference, when you're in the pool, the government is very, very closely controlling the message anyway. So this may not in any way reduce the American public's understanding of what's happening in government.
Well, of course, the Trump administration has been really tough on the media from the very beginning, very unfair. They didn't let the AP on the presidential plane. They moved up a lot of these far right MAGA outlets to better positions and better offices than the major networks and all that. So they've been going after the media pretty darn hard. And Hegseth is just, keeping it going. And we have to understand there is a reason for the First Amendment, for freedom of speech, is so that, people like, newspapers and so on can let the people know what's going on. If there's a problem, the people will find out about it. But if the people are cut off from the news, then, that's not fair.
We've seen presidents and governments of all stripes try to control what comes out, what we learn. But again, Trump, and I think I've heard some other leftists like me say, he does take it to the next level. As bad as Democrats have been and other Republicans, Trump may even be worse. And this is a good example of it. Not aware of any other presidency that ever said to newspapers, you have to agree that if you publish something that we don't want you to publish, you could be endangering American lives. No, they're fortunately not going to go to that degree. But we have seen over and over these institutions cave to Trump. Do you think that this is changing, Arlen? Are they now standing up to him once they wouldn't?
I don't think so. I mean, the major networks are afraid of Trump. CBS, ABC, they've all been sued, and even if they win and there's no charges, it's still a major obstacle and a lot of money and effort. So, there's definitely. The Trump administration has taken a lot of things to the very next level, and certainly, the freedom of the press is one of those where they're making it really, really difficult.
240-242-5646 if you want to join us. Again, love to talk to you. 240-242-5646. Got about 20 more minutes with Arlen. Here's another story that Arlen wanted to cover. This is why your energy bills are going up. Opinion from the New York Times, and I have to say that I read this article and I pretty much disagree with their opinion, although I sort of guess they're right about why they're going up, but that was only part of the article. But why did you want to discuss this? Basically, I'm going to assume, and put words in your mouth, Arlen, you tell me if they're right. Trump made a big deal about affordability, said, things are worse now because of Biden, because of inflation. And yet, under his administration, we're seeing prices rise even faster than we did under his predecessor. So makes him look pretty bad, doesn't it?
I think it does. I mean, people can see the gas prices going up. And what the Trump administration is doing is just disregarding clean energy, whether it be wind power, solar power, all these kind of things that we really desperately need because of climate change. And he's just ignoring all those and going back to his favorites with, fossil fuel industry and gas and all that. So, he's making no effort at all to help our energy policy. It's just making it worse and making conditions on this planet that much worse. And it's going to continue to get worse. And, I think that's terrible.
Yeah. And in terms of the cost, he's cut out subsidies for wind and sun, which is really crazy because the solar and wind are now as cheap or cheaper than fossil fuel generated energy, electricity in many places. And the subsidies obviously keep the cost lower for the American public because those solar and wind power plants, it costs them less to build the plants, and they need to keep prices relatively low to compete with oil and gas. So that's why, and coal-fired plants. So eliminating the subsidies means fewer wind and solar plants come on board. There's less energy. The price goes up. There's less electricity. So the price goes up. So obviously it's not a smart strategy. Now, I personally favor a none of the above. What the Washington Post talks about is an all of the above. We need everything. I disagree. We really need to cut back greatly on our energy consumption with more and more higher percentage of it coming from sun and wind. But at least they acknowledge, right, the climate catastrophe, which the Trump administration is in complete denial of.
Yeah, the Trump administration doesn't really care. I mean, they don't even talk about climate change. It's like it doesn't exist. There isn't any, even though we could see around the world, how bad things are with all these storms and, droughts and people lacking food and all kinds of things like that that are just ruining our planet. But they seem to not care. They're only interested in making sure that their billionaire friends, the fossil fuel industry and all, are getting more money, and that's at the cost of all the rest of us.
But to be fair, Arlen, the Democrats don't talk about the climate crisis either. I really haven't heard them talk about it at all.
They talk about it a little bit, but even Biden, he increased gas and oil production. So he didn't do what he should have done, but I guess he figured he could only go so far. And
well, the Times does kind of credit him for that. They, rather than criticize him for extracting more oil and gas than any president in American history or in history, they seem to view that as a plus. Obviously, I disagree with that. The Times does make a very valid point that the main reason we're seeing energy prices go up is electricity prices, just demand. These data centers are incredibly energy hungry, and we also have less natural gas from Russia online around the world, which means that there's more demand for American energy, since Russia isn't able to fill as much of the void as it has in the past. So these are, important issues. They're issues we need to deal with. Obviously, Trump is completely ill-equipped, incapable of, or certainly corrupt by virtue of the corruption, incapable of dealing with this.
I think it's interesting that AI, data centers, since everybody's talking now about artificial intelligence and how it's going to, increase and balloon upward. And, not only that, there was the Bitcoin, that kind of industry apparently takes a lot of energy also.
Yeah, the crypto.
Yeah, the cryptocurrency. And, which Trump, is trying to get a hold of and make more legitimate so he can make more money. But yeah, these things do take up a lot of energy, no question.
The data mining is very, very significant. It puts added strain. Maybe it's not very significant, but it's one more driver of demand, and a wholly unnecessary one, but one that, Trump is a big supporter of. Just so many issues that we're not dealing with. So yes. Unfortunate. Anything else on energy bills you wanted to talk about, Arlen?
Well, I just feel really bad that we were making progress in so many of these clean energy sources, like sun and wind, and Trump is trying to just destroy them and make them irrelevant, and we need them. So I think it's bad for the planet, and it's something that he shouldn't be doing.
We saw, and I thank you for that commentary, Arlen. Very well taken. We saw at the Halitics Facebook page, and definitely subscribe, definitely join if you haven't yet, this video posted by one of the more conservative Trump supporters on the site. And I sort of seen as this, I think, perceived as sort of an own. Look, even a Democrat, even Joe Manchin, says, I want Republicans to win. They're telling Maria Bartiromo that he was a supporter of Donald Trump. And to my way of thinking, it's, of course you did. You're a multimillionaire. You're corrupt. You took advantage of the poor people in your state when you were senator and governor. So you're exactly the kind of person who would support Trump. My question to Democrats is, how can we have a party that doesn't allow people like Joe Manchin to taint it?
Yeah, the Democrats do not need somebody like Manchin. He's not really a Democrat. He wants to be president, of course. He would like that. So he pushes the fact that he's takes ideas from both sides, and he's really very centrist, and he's hoping that would be an appeal, but I don't think it's catching on with anybody.
This group, this organization, More Perfect Union, that was founded by Faz Shakir. Let me get this square up better. Who I've had my run-ins with Faz Shakir. He is definitely a Democrat. He's a center-left Democrat, I suppose. But More Perfect Union did a good story here, and I believe it's very accurate. Joe Manchin's 30-year corruption scandal exposed. This is from a few years ago. I know it's old news. He's no longer in Congress. But I think it's important because we see that, yes, Trump does get bipartisan support. He gets support from Democrats like corrupt Joe Manchin, who owned coal mines that extracted the dirtiest kind of coal, bituminous coal, that had a tremendous amount of slag and impurities in it. It caused very great damage to the lungs of the people of West Virginia when burned. And also the extraction process did great damage to the land of West Virginia. And Joe Manchin used his government connections when he first started as a state senator to get all sorts of dispensations allowing him to bypass environmental regulations and ultimately make himself extremely wealthy, which money he used to move up into the governor's mansion and into the becoming a U.S. senator as well. So this is a problem. These kind of people in government, whether Democrats or Republicans, are a huge problem. Arlen, again, do you see any way the Democrat Party specifically can police itself so you can say we don't want Joe Manchins? We're not going to have Joe Manchins in our party? I don't personally, but I wonder if you've thought about this or you have any thoughts on it.
I think the reason he hung on as long as he did with Democratic support is just because if they knew that if he lost, there would be a Republican elected in West Virginia. It's a very conservative state. So if they have a Democrat, they want to, at least he's better than a Republican. I think it was their thinking. But overall, you're right. I mean, Joe Manchin was pro-corporatist. He's, he liked the rich. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party as a whole, has been hurt by the fact that they've also taken their donations, big donations from the big corporations and billionaires. And I think if they're going to make any kind of comeback, the Democratic Party, I think they're going to have to find a different way than just relying on money from rich people.
I want to give a quick shout out to Splash Ken and Maria in the chat. Thank you both for your comments. Really appreciate it. I'm glad to know we are actually live streaming. For a moment, I thought we weren't. Got a lot of folks watching now. So please, if you get a chance, do call in 240-242-5646. Arlen, I know our video last week did perform well, and this one seems to be as well. So that's good news. Hope to keep that trend going. I think you have a lot of friends out there, Arlen, like knowing that you're on. Also, I think this time, maybe the 2 p.m. time is better for some people. I'm not really sure about that, but for me, noon is really, really good. So More Perfect Union, I'm going to show this just really, always wondering how credible news organizations our sites are. So I saw More Perfect Union did this story on Manchin, mostly sourced, by the way, from New York Times articles. So usually they're pretty reliable, I think. They get a mostly factual rating, so that's good. It's not very high or high, but still mostly factual with a left bias. I don't think there's any question those stories about Manchin are accurate. But Arlen, your favorite newspaper, I'm going to take another dig at it. Said I didn't like the way they favor an all of the above approach. This is from Drop Site News. I don't know if you saw this, but the New York Times apparently has 2 reporters right now who also are moonlighting as fellows at the pro-Israel information war. I don't know what. That's what they call themselves. Information war, founded by these people named Karsh, the husband-wife team, Jackie Karsh and her husband. Their job is to help shift the narrative in Israel's favor, and they're still reporting for the New York Times. I find that problematic. Do you? Maybe you don't. Do you think there's something wrong with that?
Sure. I mean, New York Times covers everything. They cover the entire world. They cover, millions of things every day. So I imagine they're going to make their mistakes, and this sounds like a mistake, and somebody should, call them to account for it. They should. They should be as objective as they possibly can and not seem to lean in one direction.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. If you have reporters that your report at the New York Times, it's prestigious. You're obviously good at your work. You're a good writer. You're a good reporter. You wouldn't get the job. And then there's always nepo babies and other things, but generally that's the case. And if a reputable institution like, I'm just thinking Northwestern, Kellogg School of Journalism, Columbia School of Journalism, whatever, says, hey, we want to have a New York Times reporter help us as an instructor. Great. That's fine. Good. I don't see any conflict. The problem is that this particular organization has made it very clear that their goal is to train journalists to be pro-Israel in their reporting. And I don't know how that can jibe with a truly independent news institution like the New York Times, a newspaper.
Yeah, there's no way that they should be doing that. They should be as, totally objective as they can, because they are, very reputable newspaper, and they do a great job of covering the world with bureaus everywhere. And, so much information. You get a Sunday Times and you can read it for a whole week. I mean, they do a lot. But yeah, when they start having conflicts of interest like that, that are not really fair, then, it's a mistake. And I hope they change that. If they're aware of it, if they weren't aware of it before, I hope they are aware now. We'll change that.
I want to just greet Becky as well in the chat. Becky reminding me, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this, Becky. It is George Floyd's birthday. I believe today is also the birthday of who did we say it's his day? They gave him a day. I forgot Kirk, right? It's Kirk's birthday. Also George Floyd's birthday, a man murdered by the Milwaukee police. Milwaukee. So Arlen, yes, you asked if the New York Times knows. Well, they do know, because Dropsite News asked them whether they had a problem with this. They pointed out to one of their editors, to the editor, we'll get to him in a second, that the New York Times Values and Practices Handbook says that its reporters have to be careful not to create an actual or apparent conflict of interest or undermine public trust in the Times' independence. So that's what journalists they are supposed to do. So again, you give a speech or you teach a course as an adjunct at let me come up with another school, Georgetown School of Journalism. They have a School of Journalism too. There's no conflict. You just go to it's a Catholic school. They're not just, hey, this is how you cover the Catholic Church with kid gloves. No, you do your reporting honestly. You build sources and you report. That's fine. The problem is when you are working for an organization that has a specific axe to grind, then there's a problem. And when they talked to Michael Powell Michael Powell is a staff writer for the Times, and he's written for the Atlantic. He's one of the mentors. Van Jones is one of the mentors. So they have a list of influential big names who are taking that money. The New York Times knows about when they were asked, the Times spokesperson, Charlie Statlander, said, it's ridiculous to suggest participation as a mentor in this fellowship is anything other than helping to build the reporting skills necessary for the next generation of independent journalists. That's a problem, I think.
Well, if they really want to have those writers writing in the New York Times, okay, but they need to put some kind of information right next to it saying who they work for or who they have fellowship for or whatever. They need to really disclose the background of their writers. And apparently, I don't know, it sounds like they never really did that with these guys.
Yeah, didn't have the disclaimers, but really that's not enough. I've complained, of course, of the Times being too pro-Israel in this coverage, and this explains that. Certainly, Van Jones has been recently exposed for dishonestly reporting on the Israel Gaza atrocities. 240-242-5646. We're actually coming up on the end of the program, Arlen, so I timed this well, but I want to make sure you get your final word in, any final thoughts. We didn't cover the Bondi story. I'm sorry about that. I just had a number of other balls in the air, but if you want, real quickly, yeah, she was pushing. Yeah, she was. I did see that video. I just will say, but add to this, she just was just like the vice president, J.D. Vance. They're utterly unwilling to acknowledge any wrongdoing, any fault, and they always push back everything and twice as much on the Democrats.
Yeah, if Bondi was a Democrat and she did that sort of thing, when the Republicans had clout, then she would be called before Congress and told she'd get in trouble, and she should, because she doesn't, she's not doing what she's supposed to be doing there, which is answering the questions of the senators. So there's no excuse for that. But I think what the problem here is, like a lot of things they do, they know they won't get into any trouble. I mean, who's going to stop them? Who's going to say, hey, you're wrong? They're certainly not Congress. Congress will go along with whatever Trump wants. So she's got a pretty free rein, I think.
Well, and certainly not the administration. I mean, the only pressure Trump ever puts on his team is that they have to be more bellicose, more aggressive, more hyper partisan, and more pro-Trump in all circumstances. It's a dark time. It's a dark time, Arlen.
It is a very dark time, and I don't see the easy way out of it. Ideally, we could have a midterm election in 2026, but I'm not so sure we're even going to have an election in 2026, especially if the Republicans aren't looking that well. Trump will make an excuse and say, we got to hold off on this voting.
There's a lot of things to be worried about. I'm somewhat optimistic there will actually be an election. Looks like Democrats are poised to do pretty well in these off-year elections, with Mamdani up to about close to 90% odds of winning, just a little tick below that. I saw 88.5 today. Looks like the New Jersey governor's race is likely Mikey Sherrill's to lose. She's not great, but she's better than Citarelli, the Republican. And the Virginia Democrats also seem to be doing pretty well. So in this off year, does look like Democrats are clawing back a little bit, Arlen. We can only hope, not because I'm a Democrat personally, but because we got to take down these Republicans, in my opinion.
Or at least slow them down. Right now, the Democrats don't even have the power to slow down what the Republicans are doing. They have no power at all. So if they were able to at least, make progress in the 2026 election, take one or both houses of Congress, that'd be terrific. But it's very iffy, and it's a long way away.
Arlen, always a pleasure to have you join me on Halitics. You're always welcome Tuesdays with Arlen. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you so much, viewers, listeners, for being part of Halitics.